We have some shenanigans going on with Tropical Storm Phillipe. What's going on, guys? I'm certified meteorologist Jonathan Caicos. I do want to point out that the storm is very, very weak, but it does look like it's coming west. The two of those are related. We're going to break that down in just 1 second. Also, in the tropics, a new depression is likely coming in the very near future. And then we're going to venture to the Pacific Northwest and have an update on that big storm that's bringing all of that rain to Seattle, Oregon, and Northern California. Before we get into all this mess that you see on your screen, if you do want to stay updated on the weather, especially as we venture through the rest of hurricane season, you have to hit subscribe. Please do that. If you happen to find this content helpful, please give it a thumbs up. It really does help us out a lot. Post in the comments where you happen to be tuning in from. First and foremost on this screen, there's a lot of colors going here from the Yucatan to Central America to Cuba into Florida. This is just a mess of tropical moisture brought on by a trough of low pressure. This is not anticipated to develop into anything tropically, but we are going to have some nasty weather at times from Jamaica, some thunderstorms. We do need the rain into the Cayman Islands, into the western side of Cuba, into Florida and parts of the southeast, even the western Bahamas. We are starting to get in on that as well. So that is all because of this tropical moisture kind of surging in. Big area of high pressure right here, and then that trough, and this dip in the jet stream hanging out here. That should be an L on my telestration. That should be an L. That is kind of pushing in all of that tropical moisture. Now, what we're going to be watching in the deep tropics, this is Invest 91L right there. That is likely going to become our next tropical depression. Where's Phillipe on the map? It's barely visible. It is very, very weak. This is it right here. It's kind of getting ripped apart a little bit, but because it is on the weaker side, it's not taking that first way out. We told you in the last few videos that I didn't think it was going to take that first route out, but the second route, that's where it's a little different. It might be allowed to come a little further to the west, and I'll show you the latest models in just 1 second. Latest on Phillipe again. Going, and then you see that kind of curve down. This is the official forecast from the Hurricane Center. Puerto Rico, the Virgin Islands, we're back in the cone again. The one thing I want to point out here, look how weak it is at this point. We could use the rain in this area. It's been hot. It's been dry. This is going to be beneficial if we do get some of the rain to spiral through. Again, Saturday morning, that's 8 o'clock, a 30-mile-per-hour post-tropical system. Again, it's still tropical here as a depression, but this L represents it's undergone its transition to a non-tropical low as it continues west towards the Turks and Caicos. And I do think we are going to be impacted by this in the Turks and Caicos, maybe in parts of the eastern Bahamas as well, but it should be weak. That's what I want to kind of convey here. We're going to be watching it closely, though, of course. Latest models, and we were talking about, if you were watching yesterday's video, that the UK Met was the lone model that was out here. The GFS, we should have known that was out to lunch because the GFS and its ensembles were the only one that kind of took it up and out. We talked about that too. But now we have that grouping of models heading due west towards the Turks and Caicos. The Canadian goes out a little further. It does lift it up there, but I want to show you some of the shenanigans. The thumbnail said, this is weird. This is why. These two red areas right here. This is Phillipe. This is Invest 91L by the September 28th, which I have it fast-forwarded out here. That's likely a depression, if not a tropical storm by that point. Note the European has that dip down here, so we're likely seeing some gusty thunderstorms in Puerto Rico, maybe in the Dominican Republic by this time. That's September 29th into the 30th. Look at what's happening here, though. So note that the red is gone. Okay, so it's a very weak system. It's bringing us some likely unorganized gusty thunderstorms through the Turks and Caicos, and then eventually the Bahamas. Here is our cold front. Keep in mind that this is 91L, by the way. This is actually towards the Northeast Caribbean. So where I'll show you the models on 91L, that's why I'm not ready to believe them just yet, because the Euro wants this interacting with the Northeast Caribbean. So we're going to keep a close eye on that. It does lift it away, but I am skeptical of anything long range at this point because the steering currents are just all screwed up. So here is the front. This was supposed to be way out too, but with the dip in the jet stream kind of like right on through here, and we have that high pressure right on through here, we talked about that as well. Any kind of hang up with these systems as they come west, they meet different steering currents. You see those arrows out of the north and east? That is high pressure building off New England, and that kind of helps to force this back right into the U.S. and the corner of the southeast corner of the U.S. Again, this is just the European depiction of this, but we do have likely a non-tropical system that's kind of being picked up and kind of beaten by sheer, but this would bring some inclement weather to the Carolinas, to Florida, to the southeast corner by October 4th, 5th, and 6th. Again, that is one model's rendition. I want to be clear about that, but that is why I said this is weird, and that is why there's some shenanigans going on, because it's going to be interacting because it's slower, and it's because it's weaker, why it's allowed to come further to the west. I want to show you the GFS rendition because I always like to show a few here. Note that we have 91L, likely storm at that time. There is weakening Phillipe. This has more direct interaction with Puerto Rico, with the Dominican Republic, and then it does something weird. Again, it's all weird. It's kind of in between the two steering systems. There's the high right there. There's the other high, and it's just meandering there. It's just hanging out just north of Puerto Rico for a couple of days. That's October 4th. Remember, we had Phillipe out here, what's left of Phillipe by that point. So two widely different scenarios. The other thing I want to point out on the GFS, it continues to want to put that front right on through here, and note that little ball there of red off the Gulf Coast of Florida. It wants to spin something up there on October 5th and 6th. So we're just going to be watching the southeast corner of the United States by that time. Here still is Franklin. Phillipe, I should say. I'll keep on wanting to call it Franklin. It looks like a Franklin to me. But there is Phillipe, or what's left of it, hanging north of Puerto Rico for days. That's October 6th now. All right, so on to Invest 91L. We'll get an official cone from the Hurricane Center once it becomes a depression. But note what happens here. In yesterday's video, I showed you the models. They were like that. Now we have a few coming out here before it goes that way. The European model, which is not run on spaghetti plots, was out there. So if you're watching from the Northeast Caribbean, as we always should be, I just want you guys to keep that in the back of our mind, that 91L, eventually depression, and eventually RENA, unless something beats it to it, could be around the Northeast Caribbean at that time. So I'm watching that, guys. I'm watching that for you closely over the next week or so. On to the Pacific Northwest. Here's our big, big spiral of a storm out here. It continues to pull in all that moisture from the Pacific and slam it right on into the Pacific Northwest, into Oregon, Washington, Northern California. That is all because of this big upper low that's hanging out by British Columbia, transporting all of that narrow ribbon of moisture right on in. Scientifically, meteorologically called an atmospheric river. That is a weather term. That's not a hype term as well. I've had a few comments in the section that that's a term to hype. That is a scientific and meteorological term, atmospheric river, because it looks like a river in the atmosphere. You see that bright green? So that is fact, not made up. Same with bombogenesis, by the way. It's a meteorological term. It's not made up. I know it sounds weird, but there's a set definition. It's a very fast drop in pressure very quickly over a 24-hour span. That's a story for another time, though. You see the rainfall coming in our direction there. Computer went out on me, but anywhere from a couple of extra inches of rain working down the pipeline into the Pacific Northwest, towards Forks, towards Seattle, and then eventually some lower rain chances through Thursday towards Northern California. It was 1/10 of an inch of rain that the model had for Eureka. It was more like 2 or 3 inches of rain for Forks between Tuesday and then all the way through Thursday. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. If you found this content helpful, please give it a thumbs up. It really does help us out a lot. If you want to stay updated on the weather through Canada, the United States, the Caribbean, and beyond sometimes, you have to hit subscribe. Please do that, and we will catch you next time.